Welcome, folks. Thank you for joining us for our conversation about a new hybrid cloud as a service offering from Faction. That service is built on a NetApp multi-cloud architecture that is enabling hundreds of enterprises today to leverage the public cloud while controlling data and cloud vendor choice. I'm Jeff Eckert of NetApp and work in our cloud services and products team. I'm pleased to have Matt Wallace join me in the webcast today. Matt is Vice President of Faction, a leading cloud service provider and NetApp partner. Welcome, Matt.
Thanks, Jeff. Good to be here.
In summary, today we'll overview a Faction service and capability that enables you and your organization to use public cloud compute with control of data and cloud vendor choice. The Faction service is built on a NetApp patent-pending cloud architecture and set of software capabilities that lead in enterprise markets today. Cloud computing in particular is significantly changing how IT is consumed and enabling new agility and cost savings for many applications and workloads. Our customer feedback mirrors that of most industry analyst firms that the strong majority of enterprises at least consider cloud computing to be a leading capability option, if not the de facto choice today. 70% of enterprises have at least one application or element of their computing infrastructure in the cloud already today. And here's the but. As enterprises embrace the opportunity to use cloud computing, there are consistent concerns about data control and sovereignty. For example, where data is stored and how it's stored, data access security and data protection, and a baseline business need to avoid cloud vendor lock-in and preserve choices in the future. The ability to realize the cloud opportunity around cloud compute and achieve the associated benefits is available today with NetApp Private Storage as a service fueled by Faction. So let's go get started in the conversation. A little terminology and context setting up front. Since the terms private, public, hybrid, and multi-cloud occasionally have different meanings from different folks or get a little cloudy, Matt and I will talk about hybrid cloud deployment models as a combination of private and public cloud resources. There are a number of different combinatorials possible in that, but the main point is that hybrid IT is the new standard for IT organizations. IDC noted in its FutureScape predictions last year that 80% of enterprises will commit to hybrid cloud architectures by 2017 and increase that number to 85% by 2018 in its most recent FutureScape. An interesting deployment model within hybrid cloud is the use of cloud edge co-location. Many enterprises, as part of their transformation drivers, want to leverage, for example, new applications around analytics and DevOps, and they need their data center assets near the cloud compute provider and the telecom hubs, and this is enabled by firms such as Equinix, CoreSite, and Digital Realty, just to name a few. And as infrastructure and data are distributed in the hybrid cloud, 78% of enterprises consider managing data across multiple clouds to be critical. They want capabilities to move applications and workloads to the optimal environment as their need changes or as new options emerge. So from an architectural and service capability perspective, enterprises need multi-cloud and multi-directional, integrating combinations of resources that are on premises, connected near the cloud, and in the cloud. And Matt, I've also heard you counsel accounts that they need to consider their operational practices and processes as they bridge clouds. So why don't you let folks know where Faction helps there as well?
Thanks, Jeff. We definitely see a drive towards these hybrid cloud architectures. And of course, one of the things that you spoke about here is this concept of data gravity, this idea that as people move towards hybrid architectures, there is this impetus for them to get their various sources of data closer to one another on the network so they have faster access, which is a key enabler for service-oriented architectures. One of the things that we do, of course, is help people by moving some of those private cloud workloads off of their premise into those cloud-connected data centers that you spoke of. We actually have cloud nodes around the country, and we use connectivity into data centers like Equinix to enable those use cases. Now, one of the reasons why we see people making this move to hybrid cloud versus diving whole hog into public cloud as a sort of island is this idea that there's huge existing investments in the IT space. And of course, we work with partners that have long histories with our customers, such as NetApp and like VMware, where there's a lot of deep technological knowledge and strong understanding of how those capabilities work and how to leverage them to deliver application performance, scalability, stability, and security to the end users of those IT applications. One of the things behind hybrid cloud is allowing us to take the people, processes, and technology people are used to, things like the powerful suite that NetApp offers, and be able to get those really close to the public cloud so that people can use those existing investments, but still take advantage of a lot of the things that public cloud offers them, whether that is things like greater horizontal scalability for seasonal or burst workloads, easy test step environments, or being able to connect cloud-native applications they are developing specifically for certain type of public cloud capabilities, but have those really close network-wise to the data and applications they have today so they can construct larger applications that use both halves of that IT solution. So one of the other things that I think is key talking about here is how data agility is critically important. And one of the insights that we've gotten from customers and from analyst research as people start to adopt these hybrid and multi-cloud topologies is that a lot of times it's more difficult for organizations to actually get the data where they need it and have easy access to it and have the controls and governance around it and the security and performance that they expect and the consistency while still making it available to all those cloud applications. It's not really the processing of the data that they're having trouble with, it's the kind of data governance, data management, and so on. And what's interesting about hybrid and multi-cloud is that these topologies enable you to have this potential central data lake or data repository that you can then run into multiple clouds and connect into multiple places to kind of make the most use of your data. And I think a lot of the things that you hear now and understand from working is data is the kind of key to the kingdom for a lot of enterprises out there. They live and die on how they utilize data, how quickly they can adapt to new needs to process their data and empower their different type of business units through that use of that data in their applications. And the ability to connect to multiple clouds and kind of pick multiple pieces out of each of those clouds, as well as have that kind of steady state, predictable workload of a private cloud and the security and data governance around the private cloud really enables them to address all their use cases in a holistic way. And since we know that there are certain limits to kind of on-demand scale, multi-cloud topologies give you this ability to push workloads into multiple clouds and do even more sophisticated, larger scale big data processing. And it also means that developers can take advantage of the features of multiple platforms. And one of the things that we know from talking to customers is some of them are really interested in using a tool like Lambda and Kinesis from AWS as data flows in. Some of them like being able to use Google's BigQuery. Those are just examples of developer choice. And I think it's incumbent upon IT departments nowadays to really empower those choices. The central repository of this data really makes that possible, and one of the things that we've done at Faction is try to empower that easy turnkey connectivity so you can take that data and plumb it through to multiple places.
Thanks, Matt. So as Matt was saying, there's a lot of opportunity in leveraging the cloud to improve agility and outcomes around data. And in the next couple of slides, we'll overview how the Data Fabric by NetApp enables enterprises to manage and protect data in the hybrid cloud. Specifically, we'll address our NPS for cloud architecture and the service by Faction and how those overcome the top challenges to using public cloud compute. Those challenges are represented on this slide from IDG, and you could find similar top 3 in many separate surveys from firms such as 451 Research, et cetera. And those challenges are around providing data control and security and preserving multi-cloud vendor choice. The data fabric is an architecture and a set of customer capabilities, and it enables firms to manage and protect data when consuming multiple cloud services. The fabric also addresses multiple deployment models, whether it's in public cloud, an on-premises private cloud, or next to public cloud, as represented by the Cloud Edge co-location icon on the right side of the diagram. That Cloud Edge co-location deployment model enables firms to use an interconnect strategy that provides high-speed connections to the cloud compute providers as well as the telecom providers, while deploying their storage and the associated data in the cloud co-location facility outside of the actual public cloud. So the deployment model is recognized by analysts such as Gartner, a lot of attention in the business press, and a lot of interest in deployments from end users as an important factor in their cloud strategies, both to address costs as well as, more importantly, to address the data access performance requirements of many of the new applications that are transforming IT. And this deployment model, the Cloud Edge co-location piece, is central and used in the NPS as a service offering provided by Faction.
That's a great point, Jeff. And speaking of analyst research, we actually at Faction have gotten a little bit of recognition recently from analysts for our Internetwork Exchange product, which is the underpinning of our ability to connect NetApp-powered storage directly to these clouds. We were recognized as being a leader in the space of these virtual circuits in the clouds and making that easy from a private cloud environment. And that really was foundationally one of those things that made it possible for us to offer NPS as a service.
And this diagram provides a little bit more granular view of the deployment model. And again, this is represented the architecture of NPS for cloud that underpins Matt's Faction service. If you flow down from the bigger diagram that we were just talking about in terms of the fabric and the hybrid cloud, what we've really architected is that NetApp storage is deployed within the cloud co-location vendor data center in a cabinet or multiple cabinets within a cage. The storage is connected via 10 gig physical or high-speed logical cross-connects to the virtual private clouds or VPCs via the various edge routers of the compute providers themselves. So it could be hyperscalers such as AWS, Azure, SoftLayer, Google. It could be regular scale providers. It could be into SaaS vendors, et cetera. The co-location data center is typically located either at or next to the compute provider point of presence. And that means that latency is comparable to traditional on-premises deployments of compute and storage. And typically we see 2 milliseconds or less, which supports a variety of workloads and applications. And many of our existing NetApp customers use our SnapMirror replication capability to move data from on-premises systems to the systems in the co-location facility. And then Faction also provides a number of replication methods, replication services, and data migration services for existing NetApp as well as non-NetApp customers associated with this model and service. So again, the architecture enables enterprises to bridge both traditional IT to new as a service IT operating models, as well as bridge between cloud providers and control the data and their choices. For example, you can run an application in multiple hyperscaler clouds, use the data that's stored in the NPS architecture that's within co-location as a data hub, and then move the active application instance between the multiple clouds in as little as 2 seconds, because the data fundamentally stays hubbed in a central repository and you move the application instance between the cloud providers. And then through provider partners such as Faction, these capabilities are available as a service on a monthly operating expense basis. As we started the conversation, Mitch, Faction is a longtime partner of NetApp. They're a leading provider of IT as a service, and collectively we've delivered a lot of successful customer outcomes through the combination of our technology portfolio and Faction's service delivery and intellectual property. And we're excited about the potential with NPS as a service fueled by Faction for our customers. And Matt, I'll let you overview your offering, the architectural capabilities, and the use cases you're addressing, and then you and I can come back and discuss how folks can try your service today.
Sounds good, absolutely. So one of the powerful things here is that what we're doing is a true as-a-service offering, which means when you come to Faction looking for NetApp Private Storage as a service, you really enjoy it in a cloud-focused, cloud-friendly way. There's nothing to buy up front. This is not a purchase of gear. We're really offering this by the terabyte, and you really can kind of get as much as you need and have the flexibility of the platform to grow that as you need. You don't really need any special expertise. We're talking about storage that's mounted up the same way that people mount up their enterprise storage today. We offer this to customers directly over NFS or iSCSI, meaning there's nothing special about this. You're just going to go ahead and use it the way you would use a typical enterprise storage array. This is the NetApp platform that people have come to know and trust. So everything from the performance characteristics of that all the way to the data protections that you get from NetApp. You have a lot of confidence in this from a SLA and data integrity and durability perspective. We've optimized this offering for throughput here because we expect that one of the key use cases for this initial NPS as a service offering is people who want to have a significant repository of data that they kind of want to be able to push into public cloud domains sort of on demand, where they can do it for things like big data analytics or cloning out workloads or utilizing them for test dev or various things. And we're going to talk a little bit later about the various use cases. One of the really powerful things about this platform is we have replication available on this platform to ease the transition of getting data up near the cloud. So for people who are already NetApp customers and are used to using SnapMirror, this comes with SnapMirror enabled, and we can establish those SnapMirror relationships with your on-premise array. And then your data, after having been mirrored up into the NPS as a service offering, is then available to you directly to use right from the public clouds. Now, we didn't want people have to worry about sizing this. So this is largely bundled with cloud connectivity. We actually have some guidelines around the sort of block size that we expect people to send, and we give you a large enough pipe into the public cloud to handle the I/O associated with the footprint. So really powerful capability there. And this is a network service that we plumb through to the public clouds, this full pipe, running over Amazon Direct Connect or Azure Express Route. Although it's used for NPS as a service, Faction also delivers a host of other services, from object storage to full hosted private clouds and so on. And those services are all accessible over that same wire. So you can take advantage of that private, secure, high-speed connection to actually have a whole host of services and build an entire hybrid cloud architecture around it if you're so inclined. If all you need is the storage, then the pipe is there for you to use for that. But we want people to feel really comfortable this works for their use case. So we have a free trial that we're offering where you can either use a smaller amount of storage and have it for 6 months and see that reliability, or kind of take down a full, larger 25 terabyte piece of storage for a month and get a real trial of your use cases. And it's important to note that we don't have any usage charges associated with the Faction side of the service. And of course, depending on which public cloud provider you are, they may have some type of charge associated with egressing data out or connecting into their environment. But when you come to Faction and get the network connection, the storage, and all of the movement of data from our side is all in. You get no unexpected charges on the Faction side, which makes it a really good comparison. Sometimes people get unexpected charges, we find, with public clouds that surprise them. We wanted to offer something where it was all up front. You knew exactly what you were paying for. And for people that decide this is a good service for them, that commit to us for a longer term, we have a discount that makes this a very economical way to get cloud-connected storage. So really excited about the attributes of this offering. We think it's a really powerful way for people to do some transitioning toward the cloud. I want to talk for a second a little bit about how it is that we made this happen, so that people understand the background of Faction and why it is that we're kind of in a unique place to offer this. So Faction is one of the leading hosted private cloud offerings in the United States, one of VMware's top partners. We actually have full cloud nodes in 6 different geographies right now in the United States. You can see them on this map here. And we have hundreds of network connections enabled. We have a product that we refer to as Faction Inter-Network Exchange. And what that is when people are in one of our Faction cloud nodes or one of the data centers that we connect to, we make it possible for them to use a single port to get multiple virtual connections into many types of environments. Some customers use that to connect to different partners in that data center, partners in our cloud. Some of them use it out to get to internet exchanges to do public peering type of relationships at layer 3. And critically, for the NPS as a service offering, we have a lot of people that then use that to use that pipe directly to the public cloud providers. And it's something that we have developed to be done in a really turnkey way. So there's really nothing to buy and nothing to configure for those network connections. And in a lot of cases, other than getting a few key pieces of information from a customer like their Amazon VPC ID, we don't really need anything, and we actually handle all the provisioning steps and help the customer through standing all of it up. And they don't need to understand how Direct Connect works. They don't need to set up BGP. We handle all of those pieces so that it's a very turnkey experience. And using our network backbone across the nation, our dark fiber network, and some patents that we have in the area of cloud software-defined networking, we're able to kind of do this in a fantastic way for customers. So along with that capability, we are a long-time NetApp partner. We have customers that have petabytes of storage with us on NetApp platforms, and so we are no strangers to running storage at scale. And I want to talk a little bit here about some of the sort of connected offerings, because this is, I think that one of the powerful things about this is, yes, we are absolutely taking the vision that NetApp has for the data fabric. And we're able to actually realize that vision in this NPS as a service product and use those data fabric capabilities to deliver this turnkey cloud-connected storage experience. But we also feel like there's a place in this hybrid cloud world for these private clouds, whether those are driven by security concerns, data governance concerns, or in a lot of cases, we find our customers are primarily motivated by the need to do something in a really custom way. In Faction, when we deliver private clouds, we do it typically on a VMware platform, although we do also bare metal offerings and some other things. But we find the vast majority of our customers are most interested in having an experience where they get to use the vCenter client that they know and love, and that full administrative experience to roll in all the plugins, all the configuration that they're used to, so they can do in our environments what they're used to doing in their on-prem enterprise IT environments. We try to make it dead simple to consume those services. We really just start people off with a sort of starter cloud, and we let them add gigabytes of RAM, storage capacity, storage performance, and network, and kind of any slices that they want. And this is one of those things where being a NetApp partner has reaped huge benefits for us, because using NetApp's technology, we've been able to completely decouple storage capacity from storage performance. And everything that people do in our environment, all the writes land on flash, but we're able to move people from the slowest spinning disk they need for the kind of least performant applications all the way up to all flash, and we can move back and forth between those. And it's a powerful capability that we have in this environment. So when people also consume NPS as a service from us, it opens the door for them to actually attach entirely turnkey hosted private cloud environments to that, so they can use the VMware technology that a lot of our shared customers use to take extra advantage of that data. Really exciting for us. Lastly, I want to talk a little bit here about our use cases. So what is NetApp Private Storage as a service fueled by Faction good for? What do we expect people to be using this for? And we'll talk a little bit here about some of the 4 key use cases. And I think one of the things we would all agree about a platform like this, it's very open-ended. You can kind of use it however it makes sense for you. and we also always look forward to the kind of creative ways that people consume these type of platforms. But I wanted to highlight a few of the things that we know about right away. One of which is big data analytics. And one of the things that we know is that a lot of big data analytics is about how do you get the data into the right place, and then how do you process it on demand. And we think it's a fantastic use case for NPS as a service because, number one, because we have this snap mirror replication capability, it has a really easy path to land this data in the first place. And then because it's immediately available to multiple clouds, and those clouds generally charge no dollars to ingress this data, you can actually read huge amounts of data over the private, secure connection that we provide into those cloud providers, read it into a bunch of instances or services in a public cloud of your choice, do processing with a Hadoop type of workload, any sort of map reduce, take the kind of result of that workload, remove that, and then you can actually not worry about egressing the data. You don't have to store it in an extra public cloud to take advantage of multi-cloud because you have this centralized repository. You can basically, if you had to make a copy for the public cloud, you can discard it after processing. If you read it directly out of your cloud-connected storage from the NPS as a service offering, you can just leave it sitting in place and know that it's kind of on that protected NetApp storage, not have to worry about dealing with it, in an S3 bucket type of scenario and having to worry about how you get in and out of object storage, not have to worry about how you're taking snapshots or storing backups or so on because you've got that, NetApp experience behind it. We think another workload here is, the burst and seasonal workload. And a lot of the use cases around our faction Internetwork Exchange really are people who want to do a connection into those public clouds because they want to have some kind of steady state workload that's sitting inside of a private cloud where they've got full control and full customization of that environment, but they know that they might need to scale out horizontally. And in order to do that on demand in a way that they're kind of used to doing with tools that they have that work with public clouds, we connect those two environments seamlessly. And it's pretty fantastic when customers get to see the kind of turnkey connectivity between that private environment and the public environment, and we know that we're providing that here in conjunction with NPS as a service because those two things tie together so well. The whole turnkey hybrid cloud is a significant use case. We obviously know that people are trying to do that migration in many cases from the off-prem environments into those cloud-connected environments. Data gravity is a real concern now, and where your data lives is an important thing, and the data fabric has empowered us to kind of move and connect these things. And so that turnkey hybrid cloud here, we know that this is a significant driver. Enterprises are consistently talking about their pursuit of hybrid cloud strategy, but when we talk to the actual IT folks that are responsible for executing on this, a lot of times there's a lot of heavy lifting to do, and we think that this really empowers them to kind of shift their workloads into a hybrid cloud environment with a minimal amount of technological change. They get to use those same people, processes, and tools, and this offering really helps empower that. And finally, one of the most obvious use cases here would be the disaster recovery environment. So we do know a lot of people are doing DR with the cloud as the compute backstop for that DR environment. Being able to do this easy, assured replication of data and have it land up near a public cloud and know that you kind of have control over where that data sits, but that you can turn up those DR environments on demand if there's ever some kind of an event at your primary data center is a powerful assurance for people. And of course, we know that people are really comfortable and used to using those NetApp technologies for that DR. SnapMirror and SnapVault and have a long history, obviously, in doing this business continuity and disaster recovery use cases, and being able to extend those use cases in a really seamless way to the public cloud is something that we anticipate being a really powerful capability and a powerful use of the offering. So we have a link here for people to try this out. We encourage people to go to this URL and let us know if you're interested. We have two different options, like I mentioned earlier, for trying this offering. This is everything included, including the networking. Let's talk about, we're ready to take, I think, some questions from the audience here. One of them has already come in about where these are located. So we have the ability to connect to this. Currently, the offering is GA in the Santa Clara area, which is obviously a great place to connect to US West. We also have the capability of doing this up in the Seattle area. to connect to US West 2. In Q1, we're anticipating launching this offering connected to Faction's newest location in the Herndon-Ashburn area, obviously really well located for US East. For people who can tolerate a little bit more latency, we have the offering available now in the New York, New Jersey region, which also has the connection into Herndon-Ashburn. Obviously, speed of light is something we can't easily overcome, so there's a little bit more latency associated there, which is why we're getting closer to the source of the data in the next quarter. Really appreciate everybody coming out today to hear about this offering. We're really excited. I think that the key differential here is that we've made this really an absolutely turnkey offering. The fact that there's nothing to buy, nothing to configure, and really no expertise required other than if you know how to mount a volume up on an occurrence array now, then you know how to use NPS as a service, and I think that's the key thing. People think historically with some of these similar offerings have gotten a little bogged down with the complexity of the colo and the specs on the hardware and how all those connections work, and we're happy to have removed the complexity of that. And if you're interested in this, we have a huge family of resellers and managed service providers whose offerings are powered by Faction, who have the ability to layer in their additional services on this. Faction also interacts directly. NetApp is also empowered to bring this to market with their team. So if you have a NetApp rep that you're used to working with, you can absolutely reach out to them about NPS as a service. Or obviously the easiest thing here, go to one of these trial URLs and sign up for a trial there. We'll be in touch.
Hey, Matt, thanks a lot. It's a great overview of your capabilities and the workloads and use cases you were talking about, really prevalent in the cloud-first type conversations that we're having. And as you kind of pointed out, the DR one, fairly ubiquitous, and then it blends itself to a fairly easy dev test joint use case, leveraging some of our cloning capabilities off of the snapshot. But in general, we're really excited about the offering. You guys really know how to manage our technology and the things you're doing around subscriptions and other OpEx-based offerings are really going to align well to how enterprises want to consume services going forward.
Thanks, Jeff. We had another question about how you purchase and what responsibilities the customer has and what does Faction do, in order to implement this. So to answer that question, this is something that can be purchased directly from Faction or through one of our resellers. So either of these trial or from NetApp, I would say start with these trial URLs. If it's trial is something you want to bypass, obviously we can work on that. It is on a contract basis, but we do offer it with no term commitment for people who want to do month to month. In terms of customer responsibilities, all you really have to do is provide us with a few pieces of information depending on which cloud it is that you want to connect it to. And I will say we've got this in a super simple offering in the sense that you typically buy this in a 25 or 100 terabyte bundle and stack on additional terabytes as you need, and that comes bundled with the network performance required. If you have, I would say, an unusual workload or you want to buy really smaller pieces, we do allow you to break this up and buy the network component and the storage component separately. But I think 98% of the customers just want to consume this in a bundled form where it's kind of all in and turnkey. So aside from providing that information, all you really have to do is just be ready to do the sort of acceptance side on the cloud provider. So, for example, if you go to deliver this and you want to connect it to AWS, you're going to give us things like your VPC ID. We're going to initiate the service. You're going to have to go in and accept the fact that you're establishing the direct connection to us. You're going to have to accept the virtual interface that does the network. It'll show up in your AWS console. You pretty much just say, yes, this is okay, as an authorization, and then we stand up the rest. So we'll stand up the BGP peering required to do that connectivity, and at that point, the VMs that are in your VPC, you can literally we'll give you an IP block. You literally just connect to the storage mount, whether that's NFS or iSCSI, whatever it is that you prefer doing, and there's really, we contact you and handle all the kind of stand-up of that. So there's really nothing to configure on your side and no real expertise required, which is a really important thing that we wanted to deliver with this service. So one of the things that people were talking about here, one of the questions that we've gotten was about whether this was similar, how this is different from cloud command managed inside of AWS. And I'm thinking that this is a reference to the kind of cloud ONTAP offering that NetApp has had for a while. And it's really different, I think, significantly for a few reasons. First of all, when you're doing cloud ONTAP, you are essentially connecting an instance. You're doing something, spinning up an instance inside of AWS, mounting up some of their storage on a back end that gives you sort of software-defined NetApp capabilities inside of the AWS cloud. If you look back to the launch of that, I think there were some really cool things about cloud ONTAP that people loved, like being able to do things like SnapMirror and so on, and that NetApp feature set inside of the cloud. However, some people found that for their use case, it really didn't match in terms of a price component. We've actually structured this service. We want to deliver something that was not, let's say, expensive. So I think if you look at the pricing of NPS as a service, it's comparable to what you would pay for throughput optimized storage plus an S3 snapshot. And of course, this is a NetApp platform, unlike an EBS volume, where you actually have, I guess, what I would say, a significant chance of failure in a year. If you go look at the sort of number of nines that you expect from an EBS volume, directly from Amazon's page, for example, you see that it's not really an enterprise-level storage in terms of the data durability. So they recommend doing S3 snapshots. And we wanted to have an offering where you wouldn't pay more for this than you would for the combination of those things. And so I think if you look at taking Cloud ONTAP and layering that on top of the cost of the AWS storage, you actually find that this is a more economical way to do it. But additionally, we're living in an increasingly hybrid cloud and multi-cloud world. And while this does get your data in a turnkey way up to the public clouds and make it available for use, the Cloud ONTAP version of this, you're not necessarily looking at that as a multi-cloud solution or a hybrid cloud solution. In this case, if you're landing on NetApp Private Storage as a service, you're already connected to Faction and our private cloud environments. We're one of the top hosted private cloud providers in the country, and you're already connected to multiple clouds. So you can, on demand, if you want to add on a second circuit to connect your same NetApp Private Storage as a service to multiple clouds, you can pull in those connections into AWS, Azure, SoftLayer, and so on, all on different virtual circuits without having to add on anything in terms of storage and without more things to configure and without a lot of complexity in your environment. So I think that's a couple pretty significant differentiators. Somebody asked, can you explain more of the non-NetApp to NPS as a service offering, and will it land on NetApp gear? So what I will say is that, we're talking now about cloud-connected storage, and it is absolutely powered by NetApp, and I would say empowered by the data fabric, which means I think that a lot of people who are, existing NetApp customers are going to find that this is this easiest way by far to get their data migrated up and cloud-connected. That having been said, we talked a little bit about how you access this, which is a normal iSCSI interface or a normal NFS mount, which means there's nothing specific about using this technology from the cloud that's NetApp specific, right? Those are common interfaces. These are common protocols, which means that you can really use this in any way that you're used to, and there's really no requirements. Every operating system supports, using data sources in that way. Now, all of our NPS as a service offering is delivered on NetApp hardware. So you're always going to have the sort of reliability, durability of that enterprise-grade storage and all the NetApp, features and functionality and performance that you kind of expect from that. However, it's one of those things where if you're not currently a NetApp customer and you have a reason to be interested in multi-cloud storage, there's nothing that's NetApp specific. You're not required to be an existing NetApp customer. There's no NetApp software or hardware that's required to take advantages from your side. You can actually bring data into this in multiple ways. from the faction perspective as well. So faction actually, because we're one of those leaders in cloud networking, we support almost everything you can imagine, whether that's MPLS and vPLS circuits, dedicated point-to-point lines, internet access, and so on. We can actually make this storage accessible to you in pretty much any way that you're interested in and pair that connectivity to the connection to the cloud of your choice. Somebody asked, how do users connect into the faction NPS as a service? Do you need to be in the same co-location facility, leverage a carrier partner, et cetera? The answer is no. We are internet connected, and there is a certain level of internet bandwidth that we can provide automatically to give the service if you're comfortable sending your data over the public internet. Now, what we understand from the way that people are keenly interested in all these private interconnections into the cloud is that doesn't fit a lot of use cases in the sense that, when we're talking about some of these use cases, there's a huge amount of bandwidth that's being flowing back and forth here. When you utilize the 25 terabyte bundle of NetApp Private Storage, we're actually plumbing a 400 megabit per second pipe into the public cloud provider to facilitate the flow of bandwidth back and forth. Pretty significant. When we do it on the 100 terabyte bundle, it's nearly 2 gigabits per second that we plumb into the public cloud of your choice for you. And so if you start to think about doing that over the internet, a lot of people do not have that sort of internet bandwidth available, even in the sort of practical sense, even if they were able to push it. And so what we expect is that for people who are interested in kind of accessing this from outside of the public clouds, who are also not inside of a faction environment, we expect that they might use something like MPLS, vPLS, point-to-point. Now, for people who are in any of our cloud-connected facilities, as you saw from the map, the inter-network connection map for faction, we are in 6 cloud locations. We have actually in 22 data centers in those 6 regions, and as well in each of those regions we're connected to peering points as well. So places like Seattle Internet Exchange, anybody who's connected to Equinix in SV1 has access to us, and actually you'll find us in the marketplace there as well. In places like Denver, we have the Denver Area Internet Exchange and so on. So if you're in any of those colo facilities, you already have access to do cross-connects to faction. We actually have a low-cost turnkey way of connecting you to this. If you're in one of those multi-tenant facilities, for example, we actually can plumb you through with a cross-connect directly in NPS service, and then you, from that facility, can also use that pipe to connect into your Amazon VPC as well. So in a lot of cases, people who may be looking at an option for connecting directly to clouds from those colo facilities may find it's easier to come to faction, get that virtual circuit from us where we already have the infrastructure in place to do that, and then be able to layer in the NPS as a service element to do the storage on that same pipe. Somebody asked, what's the difference between this faction service and migrating the workload or data to AWS or another provider like Azure or vice versa? A couple reasons here. I think, first of all, one of the biggest issues is the egress charges. So as I mentioned, faction doesn't charge any additional fees for egressing data. So we're trying really hard to avoid that sort of public cloud Hotel California trap. And anybody who's stored lots of data in public clouds has probably at some point had a little bit of a surprise when they needed to move a significant amount of data around. And we think that this is one of the reasons why that sort of central repository makes a lot of sense for some of these big data applications. Also there's the question of how you move that data between AWS and Azure. So if you look into options for doing direct connectivity between those clouds, I think you'll find that the public cloud providers are not highly motivated to do that sort of connectivity. And there are certain types of solutions from third parties that you can get if you're willing to kind of invest in some specific single-tenant networking infrastructure around some of those offerings. But in our case, we have this virtual circuit infrastructure. Faction's a leader in that software-defined networking for private cloud space. And so in our case, if you're landing your data on NPS as a service, you have the ability to connect to multiple clouds, and that way you can swing the data over more on demand or be connected to multiple clouds without actually having to do any data migration. So one of the things we really anticipate is I think that there are definitely use cases where people will use the big pipe to load data from the NPS as a service offering into a cloud provider onto, say, instance-based storage or temporarily onto something like an EBS volume, use it, and then maybe discard the data because they know how they have that canonical copy back at faction. But I think just as well, there's a lot of people who are going to have instances and applications that sit in multiple clouds because they have a preference for the capabilities of that cloud, and they'll be reading the data directly off of the faction storage and into the cloud provider. So I think those are some key differences basically between actually putting the workload directly in AWS. Somebody asked, which deployment is the highest performance solution? Will customers experience similar performance over MPLS, vPLS versus meeting faction in a multi-tenant colo facility? I would say that really depends on the way that you're setting the data up and what your tolerance for latency is. I think for people who are seeding the data into the MPS environment, they're probably not going to see any difference. The question is just what's the most economical way to get the bandwidth that you need. So some people who have existing MPLS networks are going to prefer MPLS because it's just another point in their MPLS network. vPLS is going to be a cost-effective way for people to do it if they're in a place that's kind of on net already, where a provider like a level 3 or a Zayo is offering a vPLS service for them. Meeting faction in a multi-tenant colo facility is probably the most economical way to do it because we run our own metro fiber network, and faction actually backhauls traffic on that metro fiber network, typically at no charge to the customers who are taking down services like this. So, customers who are in one of our on-net data centers in one of our cloud geographies probably almost certainly going to want to do that. We're also talking about the highest bandwidth there because now we're talking about minimum of 10 gigs everywhere, and we're on DWM fiber, so we have the capability to turn up more 10 meg circuits or 10 gig circuits pretty much on demand, which makes it a really safe way to get the maximum bandwidth in the facility. I think if you're in a facility that's already near these, that is definitely the logical selection. Great questions. Any other questions? Super excited to talk to everybody about this. Really excited about this offering and how turnkey we were able to make this. I think this really enables some use cases for people that wanted to start tapping into some of these hybrid and multi-cloud use cases, but were maybe held back because there's a lot of technology and tools questions that come up when you start transitioning to an architecture like this. We've been able to make that really easy. I think it really enables a lot of use cases that otherwise would have required re-architecture or some heavy lifting. Making this turnkey and easy and reliable for people was a key priority for us. Somebody asked, what do you offer in terms of security, encryption, dedicated storage for critical applications? That's a great question. Obviously we are offering this on enterprise storage arrays where, thanks to NetApp, we have the ability to attach all these volumes to storage virtual machines, which are a sort of single tenant slice of a multi-tenant storage array. And thanks to NetApp's new technology and the fact that we are all of our workloads right now are moving on to the latest generation of NetApp's hardware, we're able to offer volume level encryption on these volumes as well for people who have performance sensitive workloads and so on. Now in terms of dedicated storage, great question. So NPS is a service absolutely designed to be multi-tenant, and one of the key things that we heard about some similar offerings of cloud connected storage in the past was really that in a lot of cases people didn't want to get involved in doing single tenant arrays because it didn't really make sense. They were taking down a bunch of cloud resources. It was a kind of pay for what you need type of scenario, and they wanted to abstract their consumption from that back end, not let me spec out hardware. They just wanted to say, I need this many terabytes. That's the cloud consumption model. But easy for us, that's the way Faction offers all of our storage and performance now, since we sell terabytes of capacity and blocks of IOPS totally separately. We offer, by the gigabyte compute, scale it up as much as you want. Any amount of gigs is totally fine. Any amount of internet bandwidth, no real relationship between those. It's kind of a fully customizable cloud. If somebody wanted a dedicated array, absolutely something that we can deal with. We're a huge NetApp partner, petabytes and petabytes of data under management on NetApp platforms. And so, no stranger to doing dedicated scenarios where it makes sense for people. And absolutely something that, doesn't require any upfront purchase. So we absolutely can contract with people for storage that's mapped to a specific dedicated back-end array and deliver that for them on a single tenant basis if that's something they prefer. It would work exactly the same way as the NPS service offering. Obviously, the only difference here is that there would be some kind of commitment level that you need to have to be on dedicated hardware, or some kind of upcharge to be on single tenant hardware. But absolutely something we can accommodate, no problem for us operationally. Somebody said, can you provide failover capability for the NPS over your backbone? And the answer is yes. So in all of our regions, we have some capability for offering redundant connectivity. And by default, we are doing single connectivity into the clouds, but depending on what people want to do and what their capabilities are, in the cloud interface, we are capable of doing things like splitting up the connectivity into the cloud into multiple pipes. So we actually, we have set this up on a BGP load balance basis, where instead of plumbing one virtual circuit into a VPC, we provide two virtual circuits and use BGP to load balance between them. We have the capability of doing redundant fiber paths in the metro area. Really one of those nuances where it kind of depends on what's your geography and access topology and so on, but it's definitely one of those things that we can accommodate. And somebody asked, what kind of SLAs are offered with this service? That's a great question. Right now, we are offering all of NetApp's cloud services, all of Faction's cloud services are actually backed by 100% SLAs for this type of platform. So we basically guarantee, we obviously can't provide any sort of guarantee for certain things that are outside of our control. Obviously, everything that kind of touches the actual cloud provider, we can't provide any guarantee on, but in terms of the availability of the actual storage and the components behind it, we can provide a 100% SLA on that. And that's just in keeping with our typical private cloud experience. All of the primary storage we offer for cloud, as well as all of the cloud compute, we offer 100% SLA on. In some cases, we have a 99% SLA on certain types of interfaces. So example, if you're using some type of API access and so on. But in terms of the actual availability of the data and the service, 100%. Any other questions? These were great. That's all I have. Jeff, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, no, thank you a lot for the overview. I think by virtue of the number of questions, there's a lot of interest in your capabilities and the offering. So that's very encouraging.
One final question we got, which was what kind of support do we provide versus the self-service of AWS? So we have a 24/7 support line. This is, I think, what you'd expect from support. We have a NOC that's monitoring all of our infrastructure that also handles, obviously, all of our private cloud customers, available 24/7. So this is a true, I think, enterprise-class support experience. That is a fantastic question. Very, very different.
Okay, Matt, thank you again. This was a great overview.
Yeah, absolutely. Really appreciate everybody coming out and learning about the service today. Fantastic audience. We're grateful everybody showed up and took the time out of their busy days to learn about this. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thanks, folks. Have a good afternoon.